This week in Pure Reinvention.
But going through starters to help me reinvent myself has helped me realize that I have to pause and consider the situation, that I am not the one that has to be doing things. I have staff who need to learn how to do it so they can grow in their careers here.
Episode 171, Dene Westbrook, Director, Internal Operations, Michigan Municipal League.
Engage, disrupt, adapt, repeat. You're listening to Pure Reinvention, the podcast for curious people.
One of the really cool people that we've met on the Pure Reinvention journey is Dene Westbrook. And Sonia, listening to Dene's podcast was quite an experience, wasn't it?
It was. In fact, as I was listening to it, I was really elated to hear that Starters was one of her aha moments.
Dene is a Starters alumni. She was able to participate in one of our more recent experiences. And I think really you could see her during that investment of time really beginning to have some of those aha moments and for things for her beginning to crystallize. Dene is in a significant growth curve because she has been given a lot of new responsibilities in her career. And she is eager. So she would be one of those reinvention-ready individuals who is very curious. And I think you can tell that, can't you?
Most definitely. Let's listen.
Hi, y'all. I'm so excited to talk to you today about an event that we have coming up on May 22nd, and it's called Connect Detroit.
I'm really excited about the Connect Detroit. It gives us something real and meaningful to sink our teeth into.
This will be something that you'll be expected to immerse yourself in.
We're actually going to be in the spaces where these stories take place, listening to the people who are telling the tale.
Particularly in the case of Connect Detroit, we'll have opportunities to really think about and talk about specific real-life problems or challenges and what the outcome was and how we reached that outcome.
Which is exactly what Connect Detroit is all about. Put people face to face with some sort of experience that's happening right now.
But I'm particularly interested in having an experience that brings high-functioning executives together, experiencing something, problem-solving together.
This is an experience for somebody who's ready for more and, quite frankly, deserves more. So if that's you, Connect Detroit is your program. May 22nd, 50 seats, $500, and wear your walking shoes. You can register today at purereinvention.com/connect-Detroit.
I'm very fortunate to be able to introduce Dene Westbrook. Dene is the Internal Operations Director for the Michigan Municipal League. And more importantly, Dene is a phenomenal example of someone who's reinvention ready. Dene, thank you for being a podcast guest.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
Dene, I know this is an easy thing for me to ask and maybe difficult to answer, but how does somebody know when they are reinvention ready?
Well, I think it's a lot of internal personal feelings that you have as well as what's going on around you. For me, myself, my example is that my organization was doing a restructuring. I think around May, June of last year.
That would have been 2017.
Correct. And my boss had left a few months prior and there was a hole to be filled. And the organization was trying to rearrange the staff in a way that best fits how the organization should be run. And so my boss, Tony and Dan, both of them, Dan is the executive director and Tony is the deputy executive director now. They approached me and asked me if I would be willing to take on this monumental task of leading our operations department.
A brand new role for you.
Correct. In fact, it's a brand new role to the organization. They've never had somebody who's been a leader of our internal operations, the business of the business,
because
per se.
Prior to that, you were
IT manager.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah. Now, what's different with me is that I've been with the organization for almost 18 years, actually 19 in November.
What's interesting to know about that is you're only 16 years old. So
20, okay. You want to say 16, I say 29, which okay. I will always be 29 and never age again, ever. Yeah, there's never been an operations director in the building before. And this was new.
So you're pioneering a whole new role.
Correct. And I oversee events and IT and graphic design and the facilities. Going into this new role, I knew I had to reinvent the way that I have always done things. I myself am a doer. I have always been a doer. One of my bosses asked me to do something and I am just on it.
You automatically think,
yes,
I have to do this.
Yes. Knee-jerk reaction, it's me. So I've had to reinvent the way that I think to be more willing to step back and have the staff that work under me do those things so they can grow in the roles that they have instead of just me. I am the coach. I am not the doer anymore.
So how difficult was that?
I struggle with it every day, but going through starters to help me reinvent myself has helped me realize that I have to pause and consider the situation, that I am not the one that has to be doing things. I have staff who need to learn how to do it so they can grow in their careers here.
So you became reinvention ready through a external series of events, which was
Correct.
a reorg within your department.
Correct.
You are a doer.
Yep.
And so how are you preparing yourself every day to shift from being a doer to now being the coach and the leader?
Right. So I struggle with this every day. So
Right.
what I've done is set aside some time in the morning for me to gather my thoughts, organize my day, go over some professional development stuff that I'd like to work on with each of my employees. And from there, I tackle the day and get things done.
So give us an example of how much time you take for yourself to prepare your day in your new role.
Okay.
So that you don't do what you did before, but you are consciously reinventing the way you lead these initiatives.
Sure. Usually I do my best work in the morning. So it's from the time I get in around 7:30 until about 9:00.
So you spend a good hour or more preparing for the conversations and the expectations you're going to have.
Absolutely, because my office, after that 9:00 time, my office becomes a revolving door.
The
And
Grand
I am
Central
moving,
Station.
yes, and I am moving from meeting to meeting. And I have figured out that it's very difficult for me to be productive, like have work of my own. It's my job to coach the staff under me to figure out how to do their jobs for the work that I was supposed to do. It's now on them.
You described, Dean, that there was an external opportunity.
Yeah,
And you initiated some internal readjustments.
absolutely.
The question I have is, why were you ready to put yourself through all of those changing dynamics when you were so good at what you were doing before?
I think that I was just ready personally. I mean, I've worked here for 18 years, and quite frankly, I have always been an overachiever, and the time had come to just take that next step.
Did you think that, or was that an external pressure that was kind of initiated?
I think it was a little bit of both, really.
Okay.
I mean, obviously there was a hole that needed to be filled,
Organizational.
but people joke around here that I'm a little bit anal in the things that I touch, and
you want them to be done right.
correct. And I had a certain picture of the way that I thought that things should be run, or things should be done. And Dan and Tony, my bosses, agreed with what I thought. So it just seemed like the logical next step for me. Plus, I'm always striving to do better for myself, and I was just tired of sitting stagnant for so long.
There's an interesting concept that I think that I want to explore with you a little bit, Dean, and that is I was striving for more, right? I wanted to do good work.
Yep.
I was striving for more. That was recognized by others.
Absolutely.
And those others said, my guess, imagine if we could get Dean to be the coach of 5 people having that very same attitude of engaging and doing more. Instead of Dean doing, what if Dean became the coach and Dean were able to coach 5 people to do the very same thing she's doing?
Not only is it 5, it's going to be 11 pretty soon.
So the compliment is, can we get more of Dean?
Correct.
And Dean's initiative, Dean's quality of work, the amount of generated work that Dean's able to produce times 11.
We'd be in a good spot.
So you decided to make space and expose yourself to some new experiences.
Correct.
And one of those new experiences was Pure Reinvention Starters.
Yeah.
How did that fit into your professional development?
I didn't really know when I went in there. Dan called me in and said, "Hey, what about this?" And I had never heard of it before. So he gave me a brochure and I checked it out. And I didn't know what to think at first until I showed up the first day. And I was just blown away by the quality of the connections that I could actually make in the room. These were all hugely important people that I felt unimportant. I was an IT manager. I had just been promoted, and there were executive directors in the room, but there was a ton to learn from those people. And I think that was my big takeaway were those learning how people did things or how they reacted to certain questions that you would pose, and it was just the connections that I came away with.
There's a great power in peer-to-peer learning.
Absolutely. And that's how I learn best, quite frankly, is peer-to-peer.
Well, I think as adults, we do all learn better when we can see it by example. And Starters intentionally is designed to put cool people in a room together.
Absolutely.
And let them collide and have conversations.
Yep.
And we all learn from each other.
And I think one of the big takeaways I had is when we went to the Riverwalk, or we went to Cobo Hall and we learned about the Riverwalk.
Right.
And, the woman who was in, forgive me, what was her name?
Karen. Slaughter DePerry.
What she was able to accomplish was just amazing. And that kind of put it in my head that, even though I work at the Michigan Municipal League, I don't have control over this huge Riverwalk and whatnot. I certainly have enough room to make my stamp on this place.
Yes.
And strive for what, everything that I want it to be.
So not only was there peer-to-peer learning within the group, there's this peer-to-peer learning as you collide with other people in that space, like the people who reinvented Cobo, like the individuals, some of the individuals who led the reinvention of the riverfront, or where we met, right, was a reinvented space.
Yep.
All of those things become examples that we can fall back on and add to our experience.
Absolutely.
And show by design the 5 steps to reinvention and the power they have when I apply them to my own work.
Correct.
So you completed Starters.
I did.
I believe you met a new best friend.
Monica, yes. Who I now Facebook stalk all the time.
who you have continued that relationship
correct.
with, which I'm sure if I sat down with Monica that she would say that she's doing the same thing with you because of the power of colliding with individuals who can be a part of your mentor circle.
Sure.
Then you decided to go one-on-one with an executive coach and to spend some time now taking what you learned from Starters or the real-world application of your new responsibilities.
Right.
And making time to sit down with someone to just talk through your executive realities.
Correct.
Why is that important?
Well, here at the League, we've run into a rut, I guess you could say, with our communications in that a lot of them were top down and some of them were bottom up, but none of them were lateral. And so being a director to so many people under me, I was kind of communicating in a different way than everybody else. And I think that was one of the reasons why I was put in the position that I was. And so to further that kind of a goal to figure out how to communicate better in different ways has really, the executive coaching has really helped me try to expand that, to think outside of the box in different ways I can engage people outside of my department as well as in.
The role of leadership and how we influence is available to us, isn't it?
Yes.
And I really like your thought of lateral influence, right? We think about influence being usually top down.
Right.
We hardly ever think about it being bottom up, although it's very powerful. And there is great opportunity for lateral conversation, peer-to-peer conversation, and influence. And I don't know as though we always recognize how much influence we can have until we spend time talking about it.
And in fact, I didn't know how much influence I had in this organization until I went to Starters and started talking with you.
And because of that, you've shaped and changed the conversations within not only your department, but within your organization.
Absolutely. You? And don't get me wrong, it's still an ongoing thing.
Well, it'll be forever thing.
Absolutely. What surprises me is how much work it takes. It takes a lot of work to communicate up, down, laterally, every which way. And I wasn't quite expecting that.
Well, for a doer.
Yes.
And your new job being communicator.
That's right.
It's almost 180 degrees different.
Absolutely.
As a doer, you put your head down and just produce a lot of work. As a coach, now you're coaching these 11 other individuals.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand what their motivation is, understanding what their unique contribution is, and understand how to develop that.
Yep. To
help them move forward and be successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, our professional development reviews are coming up. So I'll be going, obviously it's ongoing and throughout the year, but we have one official one this quarter, I believe, and those are coming up soon. So all of these notes that I've been taking throughout my planning hour in the beginning, in the morning, I'll be discussing those with staff and putting them to use.
As a individual who is reinvention ready.
Yeah.
How important is it for there to be a supportive environment for you to nurture yourself and grow yourself as you move from being a doer to a leader, when that could be a rather fragile time for you?
Oh, absolutely.
What's the supportive environment that's necessary?
Well, I mean, I have the support of my boss, and he has the buy-in to give me the room I need to figure things out, for one, and to redistribute, my work to the people who could help me out in that process. So I'm not bogged down with, being the doer every day. It's really easy for me to fall back. Like I said before, it's really easy for me to fall back into that position because that's what I've done.
Right.
For the last
absolutely.
18 years, it's just a knee-jerk reaction. But I think having the support of my staff as well, they are so willing to say, hey, let me take that from you so you can go do this.
Are you saying this is a journey you're going on together
Absolutely,
with your
it is.
entire team?
Yes.
Okay, now let's talk about that for a minute. How unsettling is it for them to see you are growing and evolving and willing to say what you don't know?
I wouldn't call it unsettling. I'm very humbled and proud that they feel that way, because that means I'm doing something right.
So if I were to ask you now, the number one characteristic necessary to identify if you're reinvention ready, what would that one thing be?
Oh, the one thing. You have to have the mindset for it.
You have to be ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to be ready to know what you don't know.
And be willing to learn things that you don't know. You have to have an open mind. Absolutely.
Are we born with that? Can we grow into that?
I think you can grow into it, provided that the environment is correct. If the environment is not right, if it's not the right time, you're going to have a really hard time to do it. Here at the organization, with the restructuring and whatnot, it just happened to be the right time, and I evolved into this role.
Much like putting a seed into the ground, if that seed bed is ready, and it's ready to nurture that seed into its next phase, that supportive environment is critical.
Absolutely.
And for you as a leader, your ability to foster a supportive environment of growth allows for your staff to be reinvention ready also.
Absolutely. And they're on their way too.
Starters is for anyone, even an individual who's going through a personal reinvention.
Whether it's on a personal level or your career, everybody needs a reinvention.
I definitely would recommend Starters. I think it's a really good program. Mike Bills and his team are fantastic. They really get you thinking in ways that you didn't think before.
Pure Reinvention is happy to announce our third Starters Consort, May 2nd and 3rd. Go to purereinvention.com/starters and start your reinvention journey today.
So, Sonia, as we come back and we have some key learning points from the conversation with Dene, one of the things that really, I know, struck us about her conversation was her journey of moving from a doer to a communicator.
She has some great awareness of herself, an understanding of what her strengths were and how those could help to move her forward. I was really excited when she said that she went from being a doer to a communicator, because I wouldn't expect communicator to be the next word to follow her. So that was really exciting to me.
In moving to being a great communicator, she's really relying on her community. I think you and I are both very pleased that one of the communities that she's relying on is her starters community.
Definitely. That was also another exciting moment when I was listening to her, to know that she really appreciated the opportunity to connect with strangers for the most part, and new ideas that she was able to embrace. And that was part of her new journey.
So the other great takeaway, Sonia, that came from the Dene Westbrook conversation was how she's incorporating planning time into her structured day.
Things are getting ever so busy in the Metro Detroit area with all the groups that are coming in. And so when she said that she spends her hours of 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. for quiet time to plot out what those communications should be, that the messages that she should be sending out to her team and other constituents, I really gravitated towards that message. It spoke volumes to me because I appreciate my white space now. And she's encouraging me to make the best use of that time.
Yeah, so your conversation, your thought about this, things get busier in Detroit, which is you are going to need to incorporate the planning time to make sure that the time you do have is being used to its best advantage, which means you're communicating to the right people at the right time. Wonderful takeaway messages. If you're ready for a change, make it a change that lasts. Make it pure reinvention.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pure Reinvention. Keep the conversation going and get alerts when new podcasts are up by following us on Twitter at Pure Reinvention or sign up for our mailing list at purereinvention.com.